Hello and welcome to All About A-League, the show that's all about A-League, Socceroos and everything to do with the round ball game in Australia. My name is Gabriel D'Angelo and with me to talk about all things A-League is 3ZZZ broadcaster Bernd Merkel. Hello Bernd.
Hey Gabriel, how are you?
Good, thank you. And journalist for Neos Cosmos, Alex Anifantis. Hello Alex.
Good evening Gabriel.
And as I promised, we have a special guest with us on the couch, CEO of Football Victoria, Peter Filopoulos. Hello Peter.
Hello Gabriel.
Before we have a chat with Peter, let's just quickly talk about the controversy surrounding Marco Kurtz's contract at Adelaide United. This season will officially be Marco Kurtz's last at the Reds, after the club confirmed on Tuesday that they won't renew his contract when it expires in June. Adelaide United currently sit in 6th place and are 5 points out of finals contention. Was the decision to not renew Marco's contract the right one, Bernd?
Well, if you look at what happened over the last weeks, it's very surprising that there was that kind of miscommunication, because Adelaide United really played a very good football this season, and you get a lot of good feedback both from the supporters and if I talk to some of the players. But when Marco talked to the media and said, oh look, I'm waiting for the CEO to come back to talk to me, and I think he was aware of that might cause some reaction. So I would actually be interested in what is the real reason, because what was announced in the media is one thing, but what happened in the background is another thing. And then also, who does Adelaide United really think would at this stage do a better job than Marco if we just look at his success? Because regarding the average points, he was the most successful coach with Adelaide United and won the FFA Cup.
What really struck me after the announcement was Marco Kurtz's statement that there was a lack of common vision with the club. So taking into consideration some previous earlier statements that he made during the season regarding potential high-profile marquee signings such as Bayern Munich's Frank Ribery, you could see that there was a possible difference between his vision and how far the club was planning to put their hand in the pocket, how they say. So possibly Adelaide were not a club that were willing to make his plans a reality, let's say, but hopefully he finds another club in Australia that are willing to do so, because I feel he has a lot to offer to the game, and it would be a real shame if he were to leave the country altogether.
Yeah. Well, Adelaide are almost out of finals contention. They have the situation with Marco Kurtz's contract, and now Ken Ilso is suspended from the anti-doping authority. I mean, what is going on at Adelaide at the moment? I mean, Peter, what do you think about the situation at the Reds?
Well, if I remember correctly, I think Marco was appointed by the previous ownership group, and he obviously came here with a set of a philosophy that the then owners had. And then the new owners came in, and I think it's as simple as Alex said. I think there's been a misalignment in terms of the vision and the philosophies that the owners want to implement at the club and what Marco has in plan. You know, I too am disappointed. I've loved seeing Marco coaching here in the A-League. I think he has something to offer the A-League. You know, they've been, reasonably successful under his coaching stewardship, and they've had a challenging year this year. But it always comes down to investment. In terms of what you're prepared to invest into the football club, as I found out at Perth Glory, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And in terms of what the coach can do, but it is disappointing from a personal point of view to see someone of Marco's calibre exiting the A-League.
Well, we'll see how that drama unfolds at Adelaide, but for now, let's move our attention to our special guest, the CEO of Football Victoria, Peter Filopoulos. Peter, thank you for joining us. We know that you're a very busy person, so we appreciate you coming down.
Wonderful, thank you for having me.
I just want to start off by saying my nephew, he's 8 years old. And he loves football, he loves playing it, he loves watching it. This year he wants to join a club.
Yes.
There are 4 football clubs in his area, and to register it costs between $600 to $900 just to register. The local Aussie rules team in his area costs $200 to register. This year he'll be playing Aussie rules footy instead. I'm sure you've heard stories like that throughout the country of parents who cannot physically afford to let their kids play football. I just want to ask you 2 questions. Number 1, why is junior registration so expensive? And what is Football Victoria doing or going to do to ensure that football is affordable for everyone?
I think to start off with, we need to, sometimes comparing ourselves to AFL is a little bit harsh for football because we don't have the $1 billion type broadcast arrangements that they've managed to negotiate quite well. And it is a bigger commercial beast, if you like, with a lot of the funds flowing down to the grassroots. We don't have that, you know. I mean, FFA in totality turns over 120 million, you know, and most of that revenue comes from the broadcast rights relating to the A-League. So it is a user pay system in football. When we talk about cost of football, a lot of the programs, my 11-year-old plays in the National Premier League for Bentleigh Greens in the under-12s. That's a 40-week program with 3 training sessions a week and 1 game a week. So 4 contact points a week for 40 weeks. You know, and I think it results in about $9.50 per hour, right, in terms of cost of football.
Sure.
Which is good value for money, you know, and it gets specialised coaching. It's a pretty lengthy program, almost 12 months of the year. I think there's probably 1 month of the year that he doesn't train, and it runs right through. With the community football, there are costs associated with community football, and having no funds flowing from the top, it is difficult for them to meet the venue hire, the council costs. The councils are passing a lot more of the costs to the clubs. You know, there's more specialised coaching required. It's not a sport that a parent who doesn't know the sport can coach like football, you know, and we don't qualify for Auskick. Yes, there are challenges. We're always looking at cost of football and driving the cost of football down, and we're working closely with the clubs to do that. And one of the things we want to introduce next year is a checklist, like an iSelect, of all the clubs available, 358 clubs available in the state, the various levels they're in, and what costs are involved with each of those clubs and what they get for that cost. So there's a lot of work to do, but it's not quite as simple as comparing to AFL.
So following up on that, Peter, my question then would be, one is the cost for football, but the other one is also the space.
Yes.
So is that very closely related? Because registration numbers have to be capped, right? So even if the parents have the money, then the clubs sometimes say, no, we can't get more players. Is that the only thing, or if you have the money, then space is also another issue?
Well, it's a good question, because there's been a chronic underinvestment in our sport by government at all levels. And that was exemplified by our facility strategy we launched last year, which demonstrated that by 2026, based on population growth we expect in Victoria and continued participation increases, we grew by 24% again in 2018. We're going to need 420 full-size equivalent pitches to be able to harness the growth. Most of our growth is coming from women and girls. There's over 400,000 girls playing football, you know, and that is like 3 times the amount of AFL playing football. And we expect that by 2027 we're going to have 50-50 gender balance. So there's a lot of pressure on our facilities. We further evidenced that last year by doing a survey which found 12,500 boys and girls missed out on playing at clubs because the facilities couldn't cope. That helped us build a narrative to government, which unlocked about $118 million across all levels for new projects. There's about 50 new projects that we've initiated, which will bolster our facilities, but that hasn't even scratched the surface. So we're working with local government a lot better, state and federal. And we're coming from a long way back where football hasn't traditionally been great at building a narrative to government, right? And you know, the moment that we built a narrative at Football Victoria last year, and that's influenced the facility strategy at FFA as well, and we had a policy platform that we went to governments at all levels to talk about our challenges and our issues and some of the statistics that we were able to present, we unlocked significant money. We now have an audience with government because of that narrative, and we've got to continue that work. We've got to work a lot harder because the AFL, I spent 8 years at the AFL, they are the masters at building great narrative and getting great outcomes from government. Football needs to be smarter in that area. We don't have anywhere near the amount of resources they do, but we need to be in the right having the right conversations with the right people at all levels of government, and our clubs can help in that space. And you know, the way they can help is councils are our number one sponsors, our major sponsors. And the conversations we're having with councils as clubs and as administrators are vital. so they can understand our issues and our challenges, and they can help us overcome those issues and challenges. So they're the strategies we're implementing to address the problem and reverse the chronic underinvestment in our sport.
I find that one of the reasons due to the lack of funding is because there's a lack of attendance, a lack of viewership, and this is because, in my opinion, people are being alienated because there's a lack of initiative, let's put it this way. There's a constant conversation for a second division, promotion, relegation, but there's lack of action. Why do you think there is this? What is the reason behind this lack of initiative?
Alex, I think that, you know, I've been following football in this country since a 9-year-old, you know, an 8-year-old. I went to my first national, so the football was the first national competition, professional league in Australia, of any code, in the Phillips Soccer League in 1977. Since then, football's come a long way. You know, we are the #1 participation sport in the country. We've got 1.8 million participants nationally. AFL's got 1.5. And within that 1.5, they counted international participants. So I've suggested we add our 270 million international participants next year to compare the numbers. What we have an ecosystem now, a big ecosystem, but we haven't managed to connect all the parts of football. So what you're describing is when we re-landscaped the A-League in 2005, we didn't do it in a way where we connected all the parts of the ecosystem. And we put all our eggs in the one basket, being the A-League. And we forgot everything else. You know, quite frankly, you know, one of my frustrations has been that a lot of people in this country think football started in 2005. Well, quite frankly, it didn't. It started over 100 years ago, and then it was reinvigorated with the post-war migration by Europeans that came to this country that were the custodians of football from post-war right through to the new A-League launching, and we sort of forgot those people that brought us to that along that journey, and we've failed to connect all the parts of the ecosystem. We now have an opportunity to do that through the new league's working group discussion at the moment that's happening about the separation of the A-League and also the creation of a national second division. You know, for me, connecting those is crucial. It's not about just separating the A-League and the A-League controlling all the interests of football. I think the opportunity now is to connect all the parts of football and how everybody can play a part. So a Bentley Greens, where my son plays, or a South Melbourne or Heidelberg, can understand what aspirations they can set for themselves as a club and where they could reach them, or where they could, you know, where the final destination for them is. At the moment, there's a lot of people in our ecosystem who would like to know what their aspirations are. Players in the second tier, coaches, administrators, clubs, they want to know what the end game is. And quite frankly, I can't fathom that for our 1.8 million participants, we've only got 9 A-League clubs and 9 W-League clubs for them to play in. You know, so you know, we've got to be a lot more bold and aspirational, and create that vision and the roadmap to it.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, we need to take a break, but we'll be right back to talk more with Football Victoria CEO Peter Filopoulos after the break. Don't go anywhere. You're watching All About A-League. Welcome back to the second half of the show. You're watching All About A-League. We are talking with our special guest, the CEO of Football Victoria, Peter Filopoulos. Bern, do you have a question?
Yeah, Peter, following up that you were talking about the increasing numbers, especially for girls and women. So there is the speculation that the FFA wants to bid to host the Women's World Cup in 2023. And the Matildas are all about in the media and get a lot of attendance. So my question, how crucial is it that all this funding will come in now in a very short time, that the FFA, if they really want to host that, get a very good chance to be successful?
Well, we need to be aggressive, because sometimes I feel we're forgotten by FIFA as a destination for their major tournaments. And you know, with the Matildas being number 6 in the world, and you know, one of the favourites in Paris, I think it would be a very good move for FIFA to choose Australia as the destination for the Women's World Cup in 2023. And we know we're growing enormously. We've got some ambitious growth plans. Like I said earlier, that we're striving for 50-50 gender balance by 2027. So we'll have as many women and girls playing the sport by 2027 as men and boys. And to do that, we need to also build better facilities for the girls and the women playing the sport, gender equity change rooms and more access to pitches by building the strength. But it would be enormous to have the Matildas playing in a World Cup. I think they'll go close to winning it in Paris. But I think it'd be great for them to be able to win it on their home turf. And what we're trying to do in Victoria is we're lobbying government very hard at all levels, including the federal government, about bringing the home of the Matildas here in Victoria. So all of that will help our narrative.
Now, you touched on it a little bit earlier, but the National Second Division Working Group had a meeting recently to discuss a roadmap about making a professional second division.
Correct.
How likely, or do you see the time frame of a second division starting up? And also, what do you think about Chris Niku's comments about promotion and relegation by 2034?
Yeah, well, I think the National Second Division meetings are going well. It's just a matter of building the framework now for us to be able to go out with expressions of interests and then receiving the expression of interests back and assessing and evaluating them based on a set of criteria that we need to agree upon. I think it's crucial to our ecosystem. We need to build a professional national second tier because we've got an enormous participation base, and we need to start building that pyramid that's connected, from the grassroots right through to the A-League. And 9 A-League clubs, quite frankly, in Australia is just not enough. In terms of Chris Niku's comments, I think a lot of it was taken out of context. The current A-League clubs do have licences to 2034. However, that does not preclude promotion relegation. It's quite clear when they issue those licences out to 2034, it does not preclude promotion relegation, which can be introduced at FFA's discretion. And I think the new leagues working group discussions now are critical to forming how the FFA implement that.
Going back to what we were talking about earlier, the Australian Professional Footballers Club Association, APFCA for short, they've made their intention clear that they want to separate themselves from the FFA and run the A-League independently. In fact, recently they released their blueprints on how would they go should they succeed. Do you think that it's a good idea to give total authority to the clubs, or do you think that it's good for football to stay under the same umbrella?
Well, that's a very difficult question. I think it can be separated, but what I think needs to happen is that we've got to make sure that we protect the game for our 1.8 million participants, and we're not giving away all our rights and IP and revenue to just the 9 A-League clubs. For the good of the Australian game, we've got to make decisions for the broader ecosystem. And those discussions are happening at the moment, and hopefully, when it comes to a certain outcome, that we've taken into account the entire ecosystem and how we continue to operate and function for grassroots, our national teams, our national second division, not just about the A-League.
What I would be also interested in when it comes to your daily work, because you have experience also, as you said, in the AFL, you were with North Melbourne, with Hawthorn, you were with Swimming Australia. So what's the main difference now to work for football, working in these environments? How is that?
I'm really excited about our future because, we have got a growing participation base. The other codes don't have growing participation bases. You look at sports like golf, it's not as popular as it used to be. You look at sports like cricket, there's a lot of, they're struggling in the grassroots. AFL is starting to decline in participation. We are growing. We grew double digits, 24% in 2018. We're going to continue to grow. We've got this aggressive growth coming from women and girls. I'm excited about what the sport will look like in 50 years. So some of the decisions we're making now at the New Leagues Working Group, the National Second Division, will help mould the next 50 years. If you told me 20 years ago the Matildas would be number 6 in the world and approaching Women's World Cup in Paris and they're going to be favourites, I would have said to you, you're crazy. So to me, I think anything is possible if we start making the right decisions and we start building our narrative, because we've got a strong and authentic narrative and we haven't really done that well in the past, and that's the part I get excited about being involved with every day when I'm at football. And sometimes we ourselves, our own community, are down on ourselves. Yeah. You know, there's so much positive with our sport, and it excites me where we, you know, when I started going in the Phillips Soccer League, when I was going to school, if you were playing soccer in the schoolyard, you're playing wog ball. You know, you played AFL in winter. You played cricket in summer. Yeah. Okay. Well, I remember when I moved to Perth for the Perth Glory job. My son went to a school. The principal came up to me the first day and he said, "You wouldn't believe it. We're 120 years old, our school, and this year's the first year that more kids are playing soccer than football. Can you believe that?" I said, "Yeah, I can believe that." You know, so it's changing. There's a culture shift. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, we can talk to Peter all day, and believe me, we want to. But we need to take a break. But when we return, we'll give you our tips for round 23. Welcome back. Okay, boys, let's move on to our tips for the upcoming games for round 23. First up, Friday, it's Brisbane Roar up against Sydney FC at Suncorp Stadium. Can Brisbane cause an upset, Bert?
I don't think so. So for Brisbane, the season is more or less done. And although, as the coach said in the last media conference when they were at Melbourne Victory, they want to win every game, I see Sydney as the clear favourite.
Yes, I think Sydney should be comfortable winning this game.
Yeah, I think Sydney should be comfortable, but they've started to falter lately. So I wouldn't be surprised if Brisbane, made a challenge for it.
Yeah, no, I think Sydney will win.
Yeah.
Saturday at Westpac Stadium, it's Wellington versus Newcastle. Will the Phoenix be too strong at home, Alex?
Well, we've seen the Phoenix be strong at home, especially under the guidance of Mark Rudan. However, Newcastle in the last few games, they're sort of making a last-ditch effort to reach the playoffs. So I think it'll be a very interesting game.
Wellington will win. That's my opinion.
Wellington, what a revelation Mark Rudan's been this year.
He's been amazing. I think Wellington as well. Saturday, 7:50, it's the Western Sydney Wanderers up against Melbourne City at ANZ Stadium. Can City keep their finals hopes alive, Bernd?
Interesting, because Melbourne City is still in the game. Western Sydney Wanderers, the season is done, but and especially City winning in Sydney, but they lack a little bit of consistency. So normally I would say Melbourne City is the favourite, but I go with a draw.
I think Melbourne City should be able to win this game, considering they won in the last round against Sydney. It should be a comfortable win for them.
I think Melbourne City are a danger team leading into finals.
Yeah, I agree. I think Melbourne City can win this one. Saturday, 10 p.m. at HBF Park, Perth Glory hosts Melbourne Victory. This is going to be another epic clash between these two great teams. Peter, given your previous work with Perth Glory, do you see this game going all Perth's way, or can Victory cause an upset?
Perth will win convincingly.
Fair enough.
I think that this is the last chance Victory have if they want to stay in contact with that first place. So Kevin Muscat is going to use an offensive formation. Of course, Tony Popovic will be aware of this. He will give his players the necessary instructions. So I'm going to pick Perth Glory as a clear favourite for this game, but this is football and anything can happen.
Yeah.
I go with a draw, just to say something different.
Yeah, but you're right, anything can happen, but I'm tipping Perth on this one. And the final game to end the round on Sunday sees the Mariners up against Adelaide United at Central Coast Stadium. Surely Adelaide can't sleep on this one, Bernd.
Well, normally not, but given what has happened over the last weeks, I think that might have an impact. With the Mariners also had their win with the new coach, so with this one I go with the Mariners.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Mariners as well, because they've just taken up Alan Stasic as their new coach, and with everything that's happened at Adelaide, I think the situation is kind of, I'm not going to say bad, but just a little unfortunate there. So, yeah, I think the Mariners should be able to win this one.
Yeah.
I think Mariners will win in a very, very disappointing year, and I think the club needs to do a lot of soul searching at the end of the season.
Yeah, Central Coast to go back to back. That's all for this week's edition of All About A-League. I hope you enjoyed it. A big thank you to the CEO of Football Victoria, Peter Filopoulos. Thank you for being with us, Peter. Thank you to my co-hosts Bernd and Alex. Thank you, boys.
Thanks, Gabriel.
I'm Gabriel D'Angelo. Thank you for watching. Hope your team wins. Bye for now.